Hi, in this video, we're going to be looking a little bit more closely at the nitty-gritty aspects of the FLY program at Westerly High School. Hopefully this will give you a better indication of what day-to-day learning might look like in the program if you're thinking about joining it. What you see on your screen is what we've called a flight plan. It's really just a learning proposal, and you would fill out one of these documents. It's kind of a living, breathing document. You would fill it out before you started your learning project. You would fill it out while you're in the learning project, and you would definitely work on it at the end before you have a closure conference. So we'll look at all that. Section 1 is what the students would fill out. So it starts with stuff that's very simple, your name and date. And it asks you to state your learning topic. So what kind of topic are you interested in? And it asks you, what do you want to learn about your topic? Any phrases or questions you might have about your topic. It asks you to think about what you want to do with your knowledge. So beyond just gaining new knowledge or learning about a topic, what do you actually want to do with that? It asks you to think about what experiences could enrich your learning. So those could be experiences in school or out of school. And it also asks you what habits, skills, or characteristics will you need to accomplish your goals. Maybe it's something you're going to need extraordinary time management for. Maybe it's something you're going to need extraordinary initiative for if you're reaching out to people in the community. But what kinds of habits, skills, or characteristics would you need to accomplish all of those goals? The learning, the doing, and the experience. So you would fill out that as kind of an initial brainstorm. The student would fill that out. And then where it says received by, that would be the teacher, whichever teacher you have. And then in this black box, it says once the student has submitted the above information, he or she must engage in a 3 to 5 period incubation phase to gather enough information or resources to answer the questions below and justify the viability of the idea. So think of an incubator. You might have seen one in elementary school if your class ever watched eggs hatch into little chicks. But an incubator is something that keeps that little egg warm and keeps it in an environment where it can become its best self, which hopefully is a chick, right? So think of your idea as something that needs to be incubated. It needs to be taken care of, but it also needs some time. And that's what that 3 to 5 period window is. It's a period of time where the teacher, right, so it says the FLY facilitator, has the opportunity to gather appropriately rigorous complementary resources for the proposal. It would also be a time where you as the student are gathering the resources and kind of fleshing out your idea a little bit more. In that time, you might realize that your idea is not that good. You might come across something that might cause you to change your idea. And that's where you would begin a new proposal. But if you stick with your idea, you gather some resources and kind of make your idea a little bit more real, then you would meet with your FLY teacher and complete the second section. So in that second section, it asks you to develop 2 or more essential questions that are going to drive your learning. It also asks you to gather some resources or list the resources that you've gathered as a starting point for your learning. You could link them in there, you could cite them, you could describe them, or if it's a person that's a resource or a business or an experience, you would list any contact information. So students can put stuff in there, but the teacher might also want to put resources in there that he or she comes across knowing that it could help you. Then it asks you to describe each element of your learning proposal. So what steps are you going to take? What is the objective of each step? And how will you determine success? So that's like, what are you going to do? Why are you doing that? And how will you know if you've succeeded? And there's just a little caveat that FLY teachers retain the right to adjust the resources and products at any point in the process. So though this is a self-directed learning program and a personalized learning program, the teacher still does retain that right to say, no, you should probably read this, or you should probably produce that at any point in the process. So here you would just do a description, and we're going to go through an example learning proposal to make this a little bit more clear as well. Then this would probably be something more done with the teacher, but you would think about which standards align to your proposal. And that would have to be something negotiated and agreed upon between you and the teacher. Then it asks you, how long will your goals take to accomplish? Project a tentative timeline. So you need to frame that timeline in an appropriate way for the scope of your project. You might have to break it down into periods of the day. You could break it down into hours, days, weeks, months. Maybe your project's going to take a whole quarter, a whole semester, or maybe you have one that's going to take you all year. So you need to kind of keep the depth and scope of your project in check and make that timeline appropriate. At the end of this section 2, it asks you what work habits are essential for this proposal to succeed, and how do you rate yourself presently on those work habits, right? We're looking for growth, so we want you to grow in your habits as well as your knowledge, and you would have the freedom to create your own rating scale to respond. And again, we're going to look at an example, so this will all become more clear. Then the last thing you have to do is negotiate assessment criteria. So either you or you in conjunction with the teacher would kind of develop some rubrics, scales, checklists, and you would put them here, either links, or maybe you create a shared folder in Google Drive, or it's all on paper and you have just a folder. But that would kind of be the layout before you start the project, all of those things in step 2. Then you go and do all your stuff, right? You go learn, you go experience things, maybe you interview people, you produce something, you engage in whatever it is you're about to engage in. And section 3 you complete once you're done, okay? You complete it prior to your closure conference with your FLY advisor. And this will most likely be based on PBGR 5 from school, right? Our self-reflection prompt. And you would have talking points that you would prepare answers to, and then you might have a conference with just your FLY teacher. Maybe Mr. Grimes would be there, or any administrator. But that is, you should be prepared to kind of defend what you've done and say, this is what I did, this is how successful I was, this is where I might have had some hiccups or mistakes, but this is how I overcame that. All right, so I think it'll all become much more clear when we look at an actual example. So here's one for a student named Clark Kent. Hopefully you get the pun there. But Clark Kent wants to learn about video games. And also this proposal is aimed at the student who wants to get English credit, but they're not really into like reading books and writing a book report or writing an essay. This is the kid who wants the credit, but is really into things that are not necessarily typical of an English class. So Clark Kent wants to learn about video games. He's super into video games, but he wants to learn more about the positive side of video games, how they can be used to learn, what careers are out there, and maybe even how gamers can make money. Okay? What he wants to do is he wants to organize a LAN party. If you don't know what a LAN party is, LAN stands for Local Area Network, and it's just when a bunch of gamers get together, they set up a network, and they have this kind of closed gaming network. So he wants to organize a LAN party and have a gaming marathon to raise money for veterans. Well, what experiences could enrich that? Well, playing different games is obviously going to enrich that. Maybe Clark Kent only plays Counter-Strike right now, but he wants to learn how to play different games, maybe car games, a different kind of war game, maybe even something totally different. Attending a LAN party, if he's never been to one before, just so he could model that experience and use what he learns when he hosts his own LAN party. Maybe he wants to shadow a network administrator to learn more about the infrastructure side of setting up this video game LAN party as well. Habits that Clark feels like he will need to accomplish his goals. Well, he's definitely going to need to focus, because when you're playing games, he can't just get distracted by playing the game, but he has to think about how his body is working, how his mind is working, maybe how his eyes are working, how his heart is working, his emotions. Right? He's definitely going to need to be organized, and he's definitely going to need time management. Okay, so that was his kind of just initial brainstorm in this section 1, right? Just a very initial brainstorm. So during the incubation period, he kind of puts a little more time into his thinking. He does some exploration, and he comes up with these 3 essential questions. Why do video games have such a negative reputation? Do video games influence our moods, emotions, and/or behaviors? And how can video games be beneficial and for whom, right? Like, are they beneficial for everyone? Are they only beneficial for older kids? Are they not beneficial for younger kids? Are they only beneficial for boys and not girls? Things like that. Those are questions that Clark happens to be very interested in. He's also gathered some resources. He has gotten this book. These are all actual real resources too. This book that Steven Johnson wrote called Everything Bad is Good for You, in which there's a chapter about video games. He's going to access that. He's going to access this Jane McGonigal TED Talk called Gaming Can Make a Better World. It's about 20 minutes long. And he also found these 3 articles. He found one from the APA, the American Psychology Association, or something like that. But he knows it's very official. It has this org, and it was published in a journal. But he has this article, Benefits of Playing Video Games. He also has this one about military video games and methods. And he has this one from The Atlantic, Playing War, How the Military Uses Video Games. So those are some text resources or video resources he has. But he was also thinking, hey, maybe I can go to GameStop down in Westerly and ask them. Maybe I could also ask Mr. Lamson, our network IT administrator, and interview him about infrastructure and things like that. Each element of his learning proposal. So Clark is going to read and listen to materials and annotate, which means take notes. His objective is simply to learn as much as he can about the positive side of games. And he'll know he's successful when his notes indicate comprehension, interpretation, and synthesis. So not only does he understand each article on its own, but he can kind of insert himself and what does he have to say about what's written in these articles, but he can also put them together, have the articles and videos talk to each other and come up with something more cohesive. So that's one element. He's also going to play various games, and his objective is to see if different games make him feel differently. So an example, does a war game make me feel aggressive or violent? Does it calm me down? Does it make me tired? And after he plays these various games, he's going to contribute to game blogs, and that will be his marker of success. He's going to give feedback or ask questions to other gamers and/or video game designers. And he even put that link into the top 10 gaming blogs that he can contribute to. The third element of his whole experience is going to be shadowing a network administrator. And his objective is to learn about how the school's network functions and what capabilities it would need to host a LAN party. And he'll know he's successful when he has a more comprehensive understanding of networking, right? So that's kind of what happens behind the scenes of these people playing games. And the fourth aspect is he's going to organize a LAN party for local gamers to play. He's going to have them give feedback about their emotions before, during, and after playing. And through it all, he's going to collect donations for veterans because he will know from reading some of these articles that the military uses video games in a very purposeful way for soldiers either training for combat or re-entering civilian life. And he feels it's important to make some sort of donation to veterans. So his objective is to practice organizing an event, which is something Clark has never done before. He's going to try and create a sense of gaming community, since sometimes gaming can feel really solitary, just in your house by yourself. He's going to encourage non-gamers to try gaming, maybe bring in some of his friends who don't game as much as he does. He's going to collect data about games and emotions. He's going to raise money for veterans who have served in situations often represented in games. And he'll know he's successful when or if he can give this sizable donation to a local veteran agency, and he has data to actually represent a positive side to gaming. So who knew that all of those things were tied to ELA standards, English standards? So we're going to tie that to RI, means reading information, reading informational text. So there's 3 standards that he can apply to this project. Determining a central idea, how is the author unfolding the information, and the student citing strong and thorough text evidence. Blogs are going to be these writing standards, this W. He's going to produce clear and coherent writing. He's going to use technology to produce and publish and update his writing on these blogs. And he's going to conduct short as well as sustained research projects to answer those questions that he has. there might be some tech standards that can address your project, and there also might be some math standards that you could incorporate if you want to graph your data and represent that in a different kind of way. The next part is how long will your goals take to accomplish, so the timeline. So Clark says it's going to take him about 2 weeks to read and access all those texts that he listed above. He wants to spend about 3 days playing the games and recording his emotions and reactions and how his body feels. He's going to spend 2 days working on his blog, 1 to 2 days shadowing Mr. Lamson to learn about the network, and then 1 day for the actual party. So when you think about how many times we have class in our crazy schedule, that might take up to about 4 weeks for him to accomplish that. So this is an example of a unit in the FLY program that you would have to do many more units like this to fill out your year and get your credit. But you could make it longer, you could make them shorter. It's totally up to you. What work habits are essential for Clark to succeed with this proposal? Well, he rates himself a 3 out of 5 on organization, a 2 out of 5 on focus. Ooh, he's really going to have to work on that. And a 3 out of 5 in time management. So hopefully by the time the project is over, he rates himself as a little bit better for those work habits as he goes through. And then his assessment criteria that he's negotiated with his teacher is he's going to use our graduation rubric for informational writing for the blog entries. His notes, the teacher's going to kind of combine the research rubric and the critical thinking rubric, because that's essentially what he's doing. And then the data, they can figure out how to score the data or how to score the land party. Maybe you use something that the senior project uses to score projects. So that's that. We obviously can't fill out the closure conference part because Clark hasn't actually done his project, but hopefully seeing that all fleshed out gives you a little bit clearer picture as to what the program is intended to be and how the learning will happen. Totally student driven, negotiated with a teacher, but driven by your interests and passions and curiosities. Thanks.